Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we were before the fourth meeting of the Standing Finance Committee on Monday, the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs requested an appropriation of funds in the sum of $124,300 million for critical areas which allow it to function optimally. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry is requesting this supplementary allocation to address important areas under recurrent expenditure, to include legal fees, other contracted services, Police Complaints Authority, and the AML CFT, that is to say, Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Financing Terrorism Compliance Unit. The question proposed was that Head 23 be supplemented to the sum that I have spoken to and which was agreed to. And I will deal with them, as the lawyers will say, seriatim. Legal fees, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As Attorney General, I gave an undertaking to provide to the Member of Parliament for Barataria San Juan a written breakdown of legal fees to be paid to attorneys out of the supplemental allocation for that sum, $120 million. I listened to remarks from the member for Oropouche West earlier today. I am able to say that I did provide that written document to the House, and I understand it will be dealt with. So I'm not going to go there in any particular measure, but I did deal with that and provide it yesterday, the 6th of June. Mr. Deputy Speaker, between the 3rd of June and yesterday, the 6th
General,
of June...
on a pointer, would you give way? Would you give way?
No, I'm not giving way. Thank you. Between the 3rd of June and the 6th of June, yesterday, my ministry undertook an exercise to ascertain the consent or not of the relevant attorneys regarding the publication of their names for purposes of my being able to assist the House and members of Parliament today, consistent with my undertaking. The fees paid to the attorneys who have consented to their names being published amount in the aggregate to the sum of $10,996,865.42. The gross figure to be paid to the attorneys who did not consent to their names being published amount to the sum of $51,032,394.61. And the gross figure to be paid to attorneys who did not respond to the inquiry that went out to them between the 3rd of June and the 6th of June on behalf of my ministry amounts to $8,799,462.35. In the circumstances, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as at the 6th of June, the total amount of outstanding legal fees was $70,828,722.38. There is legal work which the Solicitor General's Department, the Chief State Solicitor's Department, and the Attorney General's Secretariat have engaged attorneys for, other than those who provided the information to my ministry, who have not yet billed my office, and work for which other attorneys are yet to be engaged, and who, when they bill, thankfully, will be paid with this supplementation, that is to say, the balance of the total of $120 million, which total sum I ask this Honourable House to approve. Mr. Deputy Speaker, numbers alone can be misapplied, and can be misapplied mischievously. So unless relevant context is considered, it would be inappropriate and wrong simply to state the numbers that I have just given without there being a context in which those numbers can be considered. So with your leave, I want to take the opportunity to give context with reference to the 2015 to 24 period, in respect of which the supplementation applies, juxtaposed against the 2010 to 2015 period under the former United National Congress administration, when $99 million was spent every year on legal fees. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is close to $500 million in expenditure by the former administration. For the period 2015 to 2024, approximately $113 million a year is being spent. On an average monthly basis then, we can work out that the average monthly figure for legal fees under the Office of the Attorney General for the former UNC administration was approximately $8.25 million monthly, while under the present administration, thus far, we have an average monthly figure of roughly $9.25 million. This differential in these figures will be less still if one were to factor in the impact of global inflation in recent years on the 2015 to 2024 figures. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, context cannot omit historical reality. As recorded in Hansard by my predecessor, the Honorable Faris Al-Rawi, on October 10, 2016, and I quote, "It is a matter of fact that the last government spent in aggregate close to $1.4 billion in legal fees," unquote. The contextual point here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that with reference to my single ministry's application today for supplemental appropriation for legal fees, the former administration had spread its expenditure on legal fees over a number of other ministries and state agencies, amounting to $1.4 billion in legal fees. Further still, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we cannot ignore the significant expenditure being incurred by my ministry on foreign legal fees, currently and still to be charged and paid, which must necessarily be incurred on certain matters currently before our courts, by which my office is seeking to hold certain attorneys to account, as well as to trace and recover from certain bank accounts millions of dollars of legal fees paid out under the former UNC administration. Mr. Deputy Speaker, context must also record that $164 million of debts was paid between the period 2015 to 2022 for legal fees which this government inherited from the former United National Congress administration. Additionally, there is at least $3 million in legal fees still outstanding from matters conducted under the former administration, still to be paid from the requested supplemental allocation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this opposition has been deliberately obstructionist and continues to act to the detriment of the people of this country. This House will remember the time frame, and the Honourable Prime Minister touched on it earlier, the time frame of March 2020 to June 2021, when the COVID pandemic was rife throughout the world and throughout our nation. Every citizen had a role to play in the fight against this unprecedented virus, and this country needed all hands on deck to repel a threat which was capable of decimating our nation, but did not, due to the work of this government. Permit me to remind this House of the numerous COVID-19 litigation matters filed by opposition attorneys from March 2020 to June 2021, a total of 51 matters which cost the state $14,620,000. I repeat, a total of $14,620 million had to be paid by this government of this country to defend those matters, successfully culminating in the Dominic Suraj decision, in which the Privy Council unusually spent 2 paragraphs and more paying tribute to our Minister of Health, the Honourable Dr. Terence Dialsingh, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Paroshan Parasram, for their Herculean service to this country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this $14,620,000 sum could have been used on further improved health care for the taxpayers of this country, but had to be used instead to fight the UNC challenging the government's efforts to keep our people safe during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I remind the citizens and the House today of the constant, frivolous litigation being brought by UNC activists against the state, which we have to defend. So when we are here today asking for a supplementary allocation in order to pay legal fees, we are actually here, regrettably, but we have to do our duty, asking for supplementary allocation to pay UNC attorneys who are bringing frivolous litigation against this state, which we have to retain attorneys to defend. Time does not permit me to go into all the litigation brought, but I will highlight the impact of one such activist, which is a bill for $6,064,531.81, which the state has had to pay to certain well-known attorneys in the Ravi Balgobin Maraj litigation against the state. I repeat that figure, $6,064,531.81 to defend. Such matters continue to be brought against the state, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As Attorney General, I give my unequivocal commitment to enforce and recover all legal costs payable to the state in litigation lost by claimants against the state. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my ministry conducts litigation with millions of dollars at stake in terms of defense and prosecution of claims, and the ministry continues to successfully initiate and defend lawsuits brought against the state. I do so in the faithful discharge of my constitutional responsibilities to the people of this country and not otherwise, retaining the best attorneys available on their skill, integrity, and competence in relation to the complexity of each particular matter. Those are my criteria: skill, integrity, and competence in retaining attorneys to defend matters brought against the state. They are not the criteria employed by the other side in their choice of certain attorneys to whom they paid millions of dollars in fees. And I say no more. The other head under which we seek this supplemental appropriation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Police Complaints Authority. And with respect to operational expenses, the development of a strategic plan for the Police Complaints Authority for the period 2024 to 2026 commenced in January 2024 and is currently ongoing. The estimated cost of this strategic plan is $286,000. The PCA has utilized furniture such as chairs and desks over the past 10 years. This additional sum in the amount of $100,000 is being requested to refurbish and upgrade both their Trinidad and Tobago office accommodation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the amount of $609,000 is being requested to address the shortfall in budgetary allocations required to meet all gratuity commitments up to September 30th, 2024. This funding is crucial to ensure the operations of the PCA continue smoothly without any disruptions. They have made all necessary arrangements to utilize these funds effectively and are committed to maintaining transparency and accountability in their financial dealings. The authority is also in need of 10 laptops for investigations department at a cost of $129,350. This is to equip investigation officers with laptops for conducting interviews and securely processing files in the field. We anticipate that the time taken to conduct investigations by the PCA will be significantly reduced with that equipment. With regard to the $61,000 cybersecurity solution for the PCA, this is to enhance the security of the PCA's endpoint users and systems by implementing a cybersecurity solution which monitors all network activity and alerts the PCA to cyber threats, a reality which we now recognize we have to be constantly addressing and upgrading our equipment to deal with. There is also on the part of the PCA, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the need for 3 portable audio-video recording devices. The need for 3 portable audio-video recording devices for Complaints Room and Investigations Department, Tobago office included, at a cost of $220,035. Madam Speaker, this will provide investigation officers with certified, encrypted portable audio-video recording devices for remote visits to complainants, enabling the secure recording of sensitive and high-profile matters. It is also important to increase bandwidth of internet links and metro connections, which amounts to $16,000 monthly. The increase in the number of reports to the PCA necessitates enhanced accessibility to online media for new employee reviews during investigations, requiring the downloading of content from various social media platforms. Madam Speaker, the PCA's case management system will amount to $832,475. The PCA has been utilizing a case management system implemented in 2013 under the previous authority, which has performed well and was supported by numerous engineers. In 2021, however, the vendor of the current case management software was acquired by another company, leading to limited support and upgrades. Consequently, their IT department has started engaging alternative vendors for a potential replacement or support options for the current application. There is a need, too, to expand and reconfigure the capacity of the data recovery site to store and protect additional data, which will cost $14,625. The PCA has successfully implemented a disaster recovery site for data protection purposes. With the continued growth in data, the PCA aims to expand its capacity to meet increasing storage needs. There is a specific need as well, Madam Speaker, for one portable server room air conditioning at a cost of $25,870 for auxiliary cooling in the event of a power loss. I am told that the dripless portable air conditioning unit will be used to supplement the cooling requirements of the IT server room, sustaining efficient operation of their equipment. There is also the need to replace the vital cluster service and expand storage network capacity due to end the life of warranty systems. This will cost $662,000. This virtual system, implemented 5 years ago, has reached the end of its life. Although the servers remain operational, the risk of hardware failure increases with time, as evidenced by one already failed server. Additional information has been provided to me for the information of the House, Madam Speaker. For the period 1st October 2020 to the 30th September 2023, the Police Complaints Authority has received a total of 3,153 initial reports, and broken down by years: 2020 to 2021, 984, 2021 to 2022, 1,066, 2022 to 2023, 11,003, bringing the total to 3,153. And for the period 1st October 2020 to 30th of September 2023, the PCA has converted a total of 1,749 complaints out of the initial reports. And the breakdown is 2020 to 2021, 467, 2021 to 2022, 569, and 2022 to 2023, 713, bringing the total to 1,749. Recommendations made to the Office of the Commissioner of Police and Director of Public Prosecutions by the Police Complaints Authority for the years 2020 to 2021, 45 to the Commissioner of Police, 19 to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and 7 to the Commissioner of Police and Director together. For the year 2021 to 2022, 45 to the Commissioner of Police, 26 to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and jointly to the Commissioner and Director, 4. And for the year 2022 to 2023, 95 to the Commissioner of Police, 20 to the Director, and conjoined to the Commissioner and the Director, 15. The number of complaints closed, that is to say, where no further action is being taken, for the period 1st October 2020 to 30th September 2023. In the first instance, 2020 to 2021, 366 closed. For the period 2021 to 2022, 410 closed. And for the period 2022 to 2023, 517 closed. It would be remiss of me, Madam Speaker, if I did not mention the plea of the Police Complaints Authority regarding the implementation of a body-worn camera pilot project. the Police Complaints Authority has consistently advocated for the use of body-worn cameras by police officers in the execution of their duties. A body-worn camera records interactions between the wearer and the person with whom they come into contact and gathers vital video evidence of such interaction. Such a device promotes trust, confidence, and accountability. The footage captured by these devices obviates the need to rely solely on witness interviews concerning incidents and enhances the reliance that may be placed on the wearer's version of events. I could go on, Madam Speaker, but I think the point is well made that in light of all of the uses which body cameras can be put to, it is the intention of the Police Complaints Authority to implement a policy to govern its own use of body-worn cameras by investigations officers of the PCA during the pilot project. And there are human resource requirements for 2 capture specialists, 1 statistician, 4 investigation officers, and the funds that are being requested under this part of the appropriation are to be allocated to that endeavor. Another head under the allocation that is being requested this evening, Madam Speaker, is the Anti-Money Laundering, Counter-Financing Terrorism Compliance Unit of the Office of the Attorney General. And under that head, we have the Secretariat Office of the CFATF, that is to say the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force body. There is an agreement, Madam Speaker, between Trinidad and Tobago and that body, CFATF, dated March 23, 1999, to provide accommodation for the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force Secretariat, with the justification for this decision being the government's voluntary decision at the time to have the Secretariat based in Port of Spain, a decision that I endorse and has proved its own value over time. Madam Speaker, the advantages of having the Secretariat in Port of Spain include, among others, easy access of our national authorities for AML, CFT, invaluable guidance and support which the Secretariat provides. 2, a resultant positive enhancement of Trinidad and Tobago being AML and counter-financing terrorism compliant with regional and international standards. 3, saving on travel costs. And 4, revenue earned from the activities of the Secretariat. One example being currently, as we speak, the closing today of the 58th plenary, which I left to come to this Honourable House, which plenary has been ongoing daily since Sunday of last week at the Hyatt Hotel, with 23 delegations in attendance from Canada, the Caribbean, the United States of America, and the United Kingdom, among others, and 276 persons attending. Overall, Madam Speaker, the Secretariat, being in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, positions us as regional leaders, increases local stakeholder engagement, and results in financial growth and economic stimulation. Madam Speaker, one should note the importance of the Global Forum and the CFATF for Trinidad and Tobago, in that we must ensure compliance as one of the countries in that global network, which continues to implement robust international standards for a safe, sound, and trustworthy financial sector. The Global Forum standards, which are continually revised, require a fair and transparent exchange of taxpayer information, and the authorities are working assiduously to ensure strong structures are rolled out in preparation of the peer review process for the last quarter of 2024. And all of this has been contributed to by the Secretariat being present in Trinidad and Tobago. The highlight of TT compliance with AML CFT international standards, it is noteworthy that the CARICOM Secretariat circulated a matrix document indicating that Trinidad and Tobago is far more advanced than other regional countries with respect to AML CFT legislation to meet the demands of the international bodies, one example being the implementation of beneficial ownership in the current legislative framework for FATF standards in order to ensure full compliance for beneficial ownership. Through the miscellaneous provisions, Trustee Exchequer and Audit Act, the Minister of Finance and Corporation Act, Proceeds of Crime, Income Tax Companies, Partnerships, Securities, Tax Information Exchange Agreements, the Non-Profit Organizations, and Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Act number 1 of 2024 and Act number 4 of 2024. Madam Speaker, other contracted services for which we are seeking the supplemental appropriation approval this evening, concerns the software development company Axel, which was asked to re-engineer the company registry online system, CROSS, to operate within the confines of the existing, at the time, legislative landscape. The re-engineering included a number of different aspects: removal of the digital signature, the QR code and the digital registered stamp from all forms, disabling the auto-registration of businesses, profit companies and post-incorporation forms, updating the wording of auto-generated emails to customers, disabling the option to request certified copies of all corporate filings through CROSS. Discussions have been held with the CROSS developers on the feasibility of the changes, and an assurance had been given at the time that they were possible within a short time. And the Registrar General's Department commenced an outreach to clients and other stakeholders, requiring a comprehensive implementation of multi-layered cybersecurity measures. And I could go through those measures in detail, but I'm not going to trouble the House with unnecessary detail. It is sufficient for me to say that the users of the CROSS system, through the services of Axel, can receive ICT support and technical assistance from the company's registry. And the company's registry has undertaken a number of initiatives to sensitize and train the public in the use of the CROSS system. Again, a number of which I could detail in quite a lot of detail, but I am not going to trouble the House with this. Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, we look forward to the House approving the supplemental appropriation under the several heads under Head 23, and I thank you for this opportunity.